Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Avel Dro, Avel Dro, Avel Dro. Yes, now winter's grasp is clutching the land in its frozen grip. We have retreated indoors beside the fire, and I'm going to relive certain experiences from the last year and also talk about various issues in a rather more convivial and relaxed fashion than I can do when I'm out there trying to film with boats and sailing and trying to meet tides and all that sort of thing. And in doing this, I'm hoping to improve the quality of these videos because I think they have been a little bit patchy of late. So we now have super improved sound. There is super improved sound from that microphone just out of shot and things like that. So everything's just going to be wonderful and seamless from now on, hopefully. What I want to talk to you about is a passage that two boats of the Dinghy Cruising Association made in Bideford Bay at the end of September. There was me and a French writer who was writing about the Dinghy Cruising Association for a French magazine called Allure, who joined me in my Allure. He's called Jacques. And my friend Alistair in his little green Paradox, which is a small cabin boat. And we set out from Avel Dro, went down the estuary, out over Bideford Bar. We had quite a strong 5 to 6 southerly wind, which had really blown up over the previous day. So the conditions weren't bad on the bar. There were breakers both sides, but actually the deep water channel was fine. But we had allowed ourselves time so that we could sail back if we didn't like what we found there. And I have to say it was quite challenging, but it was okay. And then we had a long slow beat to windward to get to Clovelly, which Jack and I arrived at just before the harbour dried. It's a little drying harbour, a wonderful place with an ancient stone breakwater. The village is extraordinary because it's only lived in by local people. It's not really full of second homes or anything like that. So you arrive and local fishermen come down and talk to you, and the harbour master and the cocks of the lifeboat and so on. And the cocks of the lifeboat and the harbour master grew increasingly concerned that Alistair wasn't turning up. We kept talking to him on the VHF, and he said, "Oh, no, I'll be along eventually." And 2 hours later, me, the harbour master, and the cocks of the lifeboat sort of agreed, as it was getting dark, that it might be nice to send the lifeboat out as a bit of practice and to bring Alistair in. But we didn't tell Alistair we decided this because we knew he'd refuse because he's proud like that. But anyway, he did get towed in, and that was very interesting to see happen. But what it also brought home to us was that the lifeboats preferred to be called out early. It was your serious seaman-like decision that it would be helpful to have a lifeboat there, then, by all means call them out. This was a useful lesson for the next day, because the next day we had been intended to sail across to Lundy, but we couldn't set off early, and we couldn't set off until the tide arrived back in Clovelly, because it was dry until about 11 o'clock. And in that time they had launched the lifeboat. But that meant that the lifeboat cocks who came and talked to us had seen what the conditions were out in the bay, and he didn't reckon they were much cop over towards Lundy. It was very choppy over there, but rather easier going in towards Bideford. And looking at the forecast for the next day, the wind was going to get stronger, if anything. I have to say the forecasts kept changing, and different forecasts had different views. But anyway, we decided on the basis of that we would run back into Bideford. The wind was rather stronger than it had been the day before, and there was rather more west in it, so the swell was sort of rolling into the bay. It's only a 1.5 metre swell and quite long. But we raced along, 3 reefs in the sail, and when we got off the bar at Bideford, there's a landfall buoy there. We lowered the sail and hoisted a tiny little storm sail that we had, so we could run in with the wind and not worrying about jibing. On the bar itself, and the bar, the shallow bit of the bar is well out. You feel like you're in the open sea, but there's all these breaking waves both sides, roaring noise of breaking waves. In front of us, the waves breaking on the beach, and you do is sort of go in and then turn right, and then you're sailing between the breakers on the right where it's breaking on a sandbank, and then the breakers on the left where it's breaking on the beach, and then there's a calm bit in between, or a calmer bit in between. Well, Alistair actually was a little bit in the lead. He'd got away from Clovelly earlier, so he went in first, and he vanished completely between. The waves were high enough that he vanished completely, and his mast's 5 meters tall, so they were at least 6 meters tall. These waves, maybe 8 meters tall. They were tall, still quite long, but we were picked up in the Allure. We were just sort of trying to going down the seas, but slightly crab across to the right to get into the channel. And a sea flipped us round. There was a bit of a breaking crest and tipped us over, and we were in. And we clambered back aboard. We bailed her out. The electric pump cut in. It all the system worked, and we went sailing in again. And another breaking crest came in and completely flooded the boat, and we bailed out. Well, I'd say I was steering. Jacques bailed out, and the pump helping him. And then we got picked up by another crest and went surfing in, absolutely straight downwind. I was paying a lot of attention to staying perpendicular to the waves, and it felt like minutes. We were roaring. The whole boat vibrated, and we went surfing in a great speed down the face of his wave, and then eventually it left us behind him. We were left in the froth, and it was like floating in cappuccino. All this froth flooded into the boat again. And at this stage, I thought I was actually getting concerned another sea would take us onto the beach, and we'd be sort of piled onto the beach. And I wasn't certain we would get ashore. The boat would be wiped out, but we would get ashore. And I thought this would be quite handy if that's going to happen. It'd been quite nice to have a lifeboat there. So I put out a Mayday call on the VHF. Meanwhile, we were carrying on sailing. And you have quite a long conversation with the Coast Guard. You put out a Mayday call, they ask you all sorts of stuff. So you're steering with one hand and talking to them on the VHF with the other. Anyway, they sent out both Avel Dro lifeboats. We could see the big one. They've got a big all-weather craft, and it was actually not that far away. We could see it at anchor in the distance. But they launched the inshore Atlantic class boat as well. That got to us within 10 minutes. But I have to say, by then we were through the worst bit of the bar, and we were sort of sailing along quite fine. We got bailed out again, and we just sort of acknowledged that they came. They were perfectly charming about it, and then the all-weather craft came along. So we then sailed in and up into Avel Dro. So this was all very interesting and salutary. It was very clear that the conditions were worse than we'd expected on the bar. Had we known the seas would be that great, we wouldn't have done that passage. We did have a backstop idea of carrying on and sheltering round behind a point called Baggy Point a bit further up the coast that would have been sheltered in that wind direction, though as the wind was forecast to veer round to the west it would have got unpleasant as an anchorage, but it would be somewhere we could have sheltered while we thought what to do. But the best thing to do really was to get in over the bar, which we managed. And as it transpired, we didn't actually need the lifeboat. But I still, and I maybe will come under criticism for calling them out, but it did seem the right thing to do, and I did feel that they would prefer to be there and not needed than called out too late and ending up dealing with bodies. So that was my experience of sailing in over Bideford Bar. So this means that this year I have capsized the boat twice, which is the first time in 5 years, and it's happened twice. But it's not something you do on purpose, capsizing in those conditions. But it was very comforting that after my first capsize in France, when various bits of equipment got lost, this time everything did work. I'd done all sorts of work on the boat after that. All sorts of stuff was rethought and the systems worked. And also it was actually very comforting to actually do a real live Mayday call and see how promptly that was answered, and that also worked. I should say we also have a PLB we could have fired off as well, a personal locator beacon, but we didn't need that. We have flares and all sorts of stuff, but the VHF worked wonderfully. So that is the first of my Fireside chats. I hope that was interesting, and I hope you'll come back again to the next one.